It's your station.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Nick Coffer for beds, hearts and bugs.
An exhibition taking place in St Albans this weekend which displays the work of artists who've been inspired following a bereavement or loss. Much of the work is intensely personal, having been created out of, well, harrowing and difficult times in their lives. It's called The Art of Grieving. By the way, that's a really good title. You know that, don't you? The Art of Grieving. And I've got one of the organisers and one of the artists with me, Kate Ray, who's pulled this all together, and Catherina Petit-van Hoey. Please tell me I've got that right. Yes. Okay. Who is a textile artist, and her 22-year-old daughter died from sepsis 6 years ago. Kate, you're an interesting character, aren't you? Because, you know, you've got your day job. You're not here to talk about that. But you almost by default have become very involved, particularly in St Albans, with how we deal with bereavement. How did that happen?
Well, I had some spare time and I was looking for a charity to support, and I volunteered with a charity called Bereavement Matters based in St Albans. And for a while I was, as I said, a volunteer, did different types of work, did a little bit of research from them for a project called the Buddy Service, and then was somebody who went out to talk to people in their homes.
As a befriender.
As a befriender, exactly. Then I was invited to become a trustee, and the brief that I chose to take on was to find different and interesting forums in which to give people an opportunity to talk about or express their feelings about bereavement, loss and death.
We are rubbish at doing that, aren't we? We
are rubbish at doing that. And one of the key things is to find different ways, because it you know, as a befriender, one of the things, one of the reasons we started the service called the Buddy Service is because which was aimed at older people, is that older people will say, oh no, I don't want counselling, oh no, I don't need anyone to talk to. What I really need is someone to give me the confidence to go out and join a new club or group. Because often when elderly people are bereaved, they've lost their life partner and they're lonely.
And also it's hard to articulate, and they are perhaps from a generation where you didn't talk about your feelings. I've told this anecdote before on air, but I was in a supermarket just before going on air a little while ago, and these two very nice elderly women bumped into each other. Hi Marge, how are you? Oh, I'm good, Jean. Yeah, everything good? Yeah. John died last Tuesday. And the anecdote has stayed with me for 3 or 4 years, because it was so discordant with the reality, and they just carried on their conversation. And they couldn't find a way of the lady, I'm assuming it was her husband, it could have been her son, just couldn't find the words to say, oh yeah, it's been really rubbish. And that's always stayed with me, and you must see that in your work as a befriender. And
that is, you know, in talking to people who've been bereaved, often the most hurtful thing is the people who cross the road to avoid talking to them, or have a rushed conversation but don't address the fact that they've recently lost someone. And it's the not saying anything rather than saying, you know, the fear of saying the wrong thing is what makes people shy away from it, but it's actually something we need to get much better at.
I have a little theory which I'm going to throw at you, and you can tell me if I'm wide of the mark or not. One of the issues with how we deal with bereavement is its utter lack of uniqueness. So when you are finding yourself in a life-changing situation, perhaps you've been diagnosed with a life-limiting condition, perhaps you're going through illness, perhaps there are unique situations which people can connect with because they're unique. I guess with bereavement, for example, which we'll talk about losing a child as well. But we all go through bereavements. We all lose our parents at some point. This is the fact of life. And we will all have people die. I wonder whether part of the issue is that people feel, well, why is my situation any more special than the next situation? And people carry on.
I don't know. I think it's more that people, it's a bit like being scared. I think people, they shy away from it because they're scared. They're scared of saying the wrong thing. They're scared that they will become emotional. They're scared that they will ask a question that will cause the other person to be emotional. And it's easier to sort of effectively stick your head in the sand and shy away from it. So I think that actually what you're talking about, the fact that we all share this experience, should be a reason for talking about
rather
it.
than the opposite.
In fact, I was once, I was once at a death cafe, which may not be
I've
something...
featured a few of those on my programme.
Okay, good. So I'm glad you know what that is. And a lady there, she was in her early 80s, and she said, the reason I'm coming to this death cafe is because throughout my life, I have always researched the important things that I'm going to face. For example, when I was pregnant, I researched all about childbirth. And when I had teenagers, I read books about dealing with teenagers. And now I'm approaching the latter part of my life, and I know I'm going to die, and none of my friends will talk to me about it. And whenever I mention it to my family, they say, oh, stop being so depressing. So I'm coming here to this death cafe because I want to meet people who are prepared to have a conversation. Because I'm thinking that I might like to have a Buddhist ceremony when I die, and everyone else thinks I'm ridiculous. What do you all think? And it's, if you can have conversations like that, open and honest conversations with people, it is a really healthy way to operate with something that we will all face one day in one way or another.
And of course, this leads on to another one of the problems, which is that a funeral lasts a day, the wake can last an evening if that's what you do, and then everyone goes. But the bereavement's still there. And it's easier, isn't it? In that period where you're waiting for a funeral, people are very on alert. They know exactly where you're at. They know what's happening. In my case, as someone from a Jewish background, the funerals happen within 24 hours. So that period of relative attention is actually very short. It's the same, of course, for people from a Muslim community as well. But then once the funeral's happened, everyone goes on and gets on with their lives. But your loss is still very, very present. And a lot of people I've spoken to over the years on this programme say that's the hardest thing, that they're living with it on a day-to-day basis. And they don't feel good about seeking that support on a day-to-day basis because people have got their lives to lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing that we need to learn and remember, is that it doesn't go away. 7 years down the line, on the birthday of the person who's died, it's a kindness to say, oh, do you remember when we all did this on Richard's birthday? On a time before he'd died, and to not say that, people think, oh, I won't say that because it might remind them, as if in some way that person, that family member, will have forgotten. Yeah. That honestly, that's how people think. But if you say it, and if you draw the people who've died into life, into everyday life, it just makes the person who is bereaved feel better. It makes them feel that they're not the only ones that remember, that they can talk about that person without others sort of shying away or being a bit shocked. And it's a positive thing. I mean, the art exhibition, when I first had the idea to do an art exhibition, the idea was to allow people to have a new place to talk about bereavement and loss. But when I sent out the notices about people asking people to offer work for this exhibition, I had no idea what the reception would be. Yeah. The first exhibition was in 2017. This is the second exhibition that's taking place this weekend. And that first exhibition was really a bit of a shot in the dark. But it was so heartwarming that so many people responded. I mean, we had over 35 artists take part from all different backgrounds. We had professional artists who exhibited all around the world. One lady who was exhibiting pictures about her mum, and her mum had died when she was 14, and actually she felt that all of her career had been informed by that very important loss in her early life. We had other people who'd lost family members much more recently, or lost an important friend. I mean, another lady who'd only ever painted one painting after the death of her son. He was 28 when he died. She'd painted one painting. It had been on the wall in her house for 7 years. She came and heard me speak at a Hearts Bells event in St Albans, and she asked me, could she please exhibit the painting? And of course I said yes. And then went home and thought, oh my goodness me, this painting is one of her most valuable possessions. Yes. It's been safe in her house all this time, and she wants to bring it to the barn and exhibit it. That's such an important thing that she's trusting me with.
I'm conscious, Catherina, that we haven't talked about your story yet. And do you know what? I'm going to hold it back until after the news headlines because I don't think this is a topic to be rushed. I'm happy to slow it down, and we'll hear the story that happened with your daughter and how art has helped you. And we will do that after the news at 2:30, I promise you. I just want to finish with your side of the story, Kate, and just wonder that in all of your years of working with Bereavement Matters and being a trained befriender, no doubt training befrienders as well, and the way that you've thought about death, the deaths of others and of yourself, how all this work has actually affected you on a personal level, your perspective of life, your perspective of death, your perspective of humans in general.
Well, the Art of Grieving exhibition that took place in 2017 was, I can honestly say, one of the things that I've done that I've been most proud of. And it was because it felt like it was a real coming together of a community. And I think in all the voluntary work I've done, I've always wanted to pull communities together and pulling in different groups who perhaps sometimes would be less likely to join in. And so for me, I would say that this doing this work, it's just the fact that you feel that you're doing things that are supportive of people, and thereby, supportive of yourself in a way. If you feel that, I always think that if you give kindness, then you are more able to receive kindness. So that's sort of how I operate.
You mentioned earlier on as well that you talk to people all the time who've worked out and thought through their own death. Does your work in and around bereavement lead you to that thought process, or are you not there yet?
No, I would actually say that after going to, and I actually organised a couple of death cafes myself in St Albans, that I lost my aunt when I was very young, and it had a really profound effect on me, and because I'd felt very connected to her. So I've always had this feeling that death should be talked about. I think partly because at that young age, nobody really allowed me to talk about how I felt about my Auntie Anne. And so I've always been someone that hasn't shied away from death. But what it has done is meant that I have a little note on my phone which says songs I want at my funeral,
right.
Poems I want at my funeral. This is where I want my ashes scattered. Can we play Ding Dong the Witch is Dead at the party afterwards?
Okay.
I have, I've had this discussion with my my family, my children, my husband, and they think I'm a bit mad, but they know that I'm joking. They understand, and we all do believe, I think, in my family, that it is much healthier to be open about these things.
Absolutely. I'm coming into Thunder Road and leaving to Born to Run, by the way, in case those will be my entrance and my departing songs.
Lovely.
Come hell or high water. Right, we'll talk to you, Catherina, after the news at 2:30. Just in case anyone is about to leave us quite wide, I don't know, but just give me details of the exhibition now for them in case they won't be around in 10 minutes' time.
The exhibition is at Kingsbury Barn in St Albans. That's in Branch Road in St Albans, and it's open from 11 till 4 on Saturday the 7th and Sunday the 8th of September.
Entry is
free of charge.
By the way, that wasn't permission to leave. Do not take that as permission to leave. We'll carry